Jonah, in your Dvar Torah, you quoted a timeless passage from Abraham Joshua Heschel about his radical amazement. Everything is phenomenal, he writes. Everything is incredible. Never treat your life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. It is this ability to be surprised, to treat things that in an unexpected way that I see in you. And although I'm not at all surprised by your outstanding reading of the Torah and leading the service last night, but I think all of us are amazed about how wonderful a person you are and how capable about public speaking and just in general being and probably liking to be the center of attention in every room you are in. So in this week's Torah portion, Jacob was able, maybe forced to see God's presence everywhere. As an important detail of this moment, there is an important detail of this moment. In the past, people believed that God was attached to a specific geographical area. And once you crossed the border, you needed to change your God. Therefore, Jacob's ladder is not only a dream, but a theological statement. Torah claims that there is only one God who is everywhere, not just in the land of Israel, not just for the Jewish people. What does it mean to believe there is only one God everywhere, as opposed to many gods in different areas? I think this can lead to a sense of stability, but also a radical acceptance of differences in other people. If something exists, it means the same God that created you has created this other person or this other thing that you might not like. It means that everything you see is God's creation and has a divine spark. Everything. Imagine living with a constant inspiration, open to new experiences and perspectives throughout your life. Wouldn't it be a lovely world? This is the world Heschel imagined and dreamed about. What happens when this sense is suppressed? The ability for us to be surprised, the ability to be curious, to wonder what is interesting in this lesson, to wonder what is it that this place, where is the divine spark in this person, in this place, in this concept, in this news article, in everything. What happens when this is suppressed or manipulated? Here is another quote from Heschel. When faith is completely replaced by creed, worship by discipline, love by habit, when the crisis of today is ignored because of the splendor of the past, when faith becomes a heirloom rather than a living fountain, when religion speaks only in the name of authority rather than with the voice of compassion, its message becomes meaningless. When you lose the sense of inspiration and amazement of this world, you replace essence with formality, morality with self-righteousness, and life with existence. Most importantly, you become vulnerable to outside influences. Peter Pomerantsev is an author and researcher of what we call today propaganda. He was born in the Soviet Union and raised in the UK. Pomerantsev spent 10 years working as a TV producer in Russia in the early 2000s, creating documentaries and entertainment shows and witnessing how the country's media was turned into the state propaganda. This experience shaped his understanding of how authoritarian regimes manipulate public perception. Today, he uses his personal experience in an academic research to explore how modern media works and how it can be challenged. One of his books, entitled "This is Not Propaganda: Adventures in the War Against Reality," looks at how disinformation is used as a weapon in the digital age, in the age we live in today. Combining investigative journalism with his family history, his parents were Soviet dissidents. He examines alternative facts and war on truth that define our times. In the days of social media and information overabundance, people need a new sense of identity, he claims. In a world where people have a surplus of free time and an attention economy, the old concept of national loyalty has become outdated. Many people find refuge not in belonging to large groups, but belonging to small, often isolated groups of people. So modern propaganda understands it very well and fills the gap in people's need for social glue. By offering people deliberately divisive narratives, in the words of Pomerantsov, when people have less in common than before, you have to reimagine a new version of the people. Facts become secondary of this logic. After all, you're not trying to win the evidence-driven debate about ideological concept in public sphere. Your aim is to seal your audience behind a verbal wall. It's the opposite of centrism, where you have to bring everyone together in one big tent, smooth out differences. Here, the different groups don't even need to meet each other. Actually, it might be better if they don't. What if one perceives the other as their enemy? To seal this improvised identity, one needs an enemy, the non-people. Best to keep it too as abstract as possible, so anyone can invent their own version of what it means the establishment will do, or the elites. So in other words, human progress, social media and other technological achievements has led to this new reality. In today's world, dividing people into isolated groups is much easier. These small groups will have a clear sense of loyalty, belonging and values. It is as if we are back in that old world where each territory had its own little god. But it's not geographical this time. Division and tribalism nowadays are fueled by following one's small tribe. Propagandists don't even have to create these divisions. They just amplify them. Unity becomes less important than controlling fragmented identities, each sealed off in its own echo chamber. The good old principle, divide and rule, became a natural part of the world and an ideal ground for propaganda to thrive. The Mishnah, a collective rabbinic teaching from the 3rd century of the Common Era, has this teaching. Who is wise? They ask. Who is wise? What it means to be wise? One who learns from every person. There is always a danger of being the victim of modern propagandist tactics. Propaganda thrives in the environment of many closed communities and prevents them from learning from each person. However, true wisdom comes from exposure to varied perspectives and learning from others. True peace comes from talking to people you disagree. Peace cannot be achieved if you always talk to people you agree with. The ultimate goal of propaganda is not just to mislead, but also to blur the line between truth and lies entirely. However, in the world of fast-spreading information, who and how will decide which news is a lie and which is a fact-checked truth? The world of social media removed gatekeepers from the news and with it opened the gates for radical relativism and totalitarianism to enter this world. Hannah Arendt, in her Origins of Totalitarianism, observed this phenomenon a long time ago. She wrote, "The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or convinced communism, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, meaning the reality of experience, and the distinction between true and false, the standards of thought, no longer exists." This blurring of truth creates a reality where misinformation carries the same weight as facts. Lies can overshadow measured scientific conclusions. When propaganda dominates, the very foundation of rational discourse is undermined, and every conversation becomes about emotions, about sensation, popularity. In such a world, people lose sight of the most basic moral principles of decency, humanity, and humility. Such a world overshadows compassion with cynical indifference. As Holocaust survivor and Nobel Prize winner Elie Wiesel once said, "The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference." Indifference allows propaganda to thrive. It allows us to seal ourselves in a small echo chamber and only speak to people we agree with. The lack of curiosity, inspiration, and radical amazement opens the door for dark forces ruling the world. The basis of any propaganda and totalitarianism is the indifference to the suffering of others. Its antidote, its radical care for humanity, radical amazement, and life with phrase, "God is in this place too, and I didn't know it." The life where this phrase is a motto whenever you are, whoever you speak. Shabbat Shalom.